Hello, everyone, and welcome to the High School Sports Saturday Show on 105.5 FM WEEI. I am MassLive High School Sports Editor Jim Pignatiello. Thanks for kicking off your weekend with us. We have a great show planned for you this week. Or it better be, or else Tom King and Sam Dostaler are in a lot of trouble. Speaking of those two, we're doing a three-man weave this week. We got a lot to talk about, so I brought in the aforementioned Tom King from MassLive. Say hello.
Hello.
And, of course, Sam Dostaler, also from MassLive. You should know him already by now.
Back for week number 2 and happy to be here.
So we have the voice and the king. It should be a good show, I would think. Later in the show, I will be joined by WEEI Springfield Athlete of the Week, Alex DeSantis. He's a senior standout midfielder for the Belchertown boys soccer team. That team is playing today, looking for its third straight Western Mass title. They're playing in their fifth straight title game. So Alex is a veteran of big-time games and is coming off just a massive week going into Saturday. So you'll hear that interview coming up shortly. But before we get to some soccer and to all the championship games going on this weekend, I wanted to kick off, guys, with the football postseason. Had an incredible Friday night. I mean, just a couple of games that, people will be talking about for quite a while. Tom, you went to Central. Not necessarily.
Not quite as memorable as those other games that were going on tonight, but
True.
Central showed, they're the powerhouse. It's still the team to beat.
And it's Central Longmeadow. I mean, it's become a thing. It's the history and everything of Longmeadow, all the years of dominance, and Central is the team that is currently the dominant team. Did you get a sense of kind of that rivalry, that history?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, after the Westfield game, we were at the regular season finale when Central knocked off Westfield for the AA Conference Championship. I was on the field talking to the guys, and I told them they were going to be playing Longmeadow, and every single one of them were very excited to get to play Longmeadow one more time. Longmeadow had played them tough in the regular season. It wasn't quite as good of a game. Central won 35-12 tonight.
We're gonna get to more excitement, but this Central team, you've seen them the most, Tom. It's a team that has that feeling of a truly special team that could really make some history here this year. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, they really haven't been challenged in Western Mass play. Their only loss is to Everett, who's top 5 in the state and a Division I powerhouse. So I mean, they've been very dominant on both sides of the ball, offense, defense. You guys have seen them play. I mean, it starts with Cody Williams, but they're so deep and talented all across the board.
Well, you just look at last week when in the regular season finale when Troy Morrow went off at the running back position and really carried them in that game against Westfield. You said it does start with Cody Williams, but it can be anybody on that offense, really. I mean, Malik Johnson, wide receiver, Juwan Williams at wide receiver. They just got so many guys who can hurt you in so many different ways. And you also, whenever you talk about their offense and their defense, you got to start with that defensive line of Central. They do an excellent job pushing the other team off the ball or getting pressure on the opposing team's quarterback just because of their sheer size and strength on that offensive line.
And Tom, you said Friday night was another night where it was a lot of the ground game, right? It wasn't a Cody Williams show; it was a ground game.
Yeah, tonight they ran for 287 yards. Troy Morrow had another great game. He went for $120 and a couple touchdowns. Cody Williams, he's been running pretty well this year too. I mean, it's his arm is where he's gonna be a college quarterback, but he's been running the ball great all season, scrambling around and making plays with his feet.
And that's going to make Central so difficult because you can't jam the box up against them. You can't load the box and wait for the run. So you have to drop some guys back in pass protection looking for the pass, and that just opens up all this space underneath. And that's where Cody Williams really finds the green space to run, and he's done a very good job when the opposing teams have dropped more men back in coverage. He's tucked that ball, and he's run with it. And he makes smart decisions when he runs. He gets out of bounds. He gets down. He doesn't take the hit when he doesn't have to. He's very smart with the ball, both throwing and running. And that's another thing that I think might go a little bit overlooked when we talk about Cody Williams. But he has such great ball protection out there, no matter what he's doing, running or throwing.
He actually did throw an interception tonight. He only his third of the season. He was a little upset with himself for that one after the game. He had Troy Morrow open down the middle. Max Japouris he underthrew it a little. Japouris made a great play on the ball, but like you said, he takes care of the ball.
We'll have to check in our final segment on our Dagenet watch and see if that interception knocks him off the top spot. I have a feeling it probably won't.
I don't think anything can knock him off at this point.
I think he's done enough.
Yeah. You wonder, like you said, all the weapons they have and the different ways they can beat you. I mean, we're focusing offensively, but what is it going to take? Is it about finding a team that can create the pressure with only a couple of guys and a 4-man front that doesn't need to be blitzing and can somehow get through that offensive line? You can't take away, like we said, we can't put 8 guys in the box because forget about it. If you drop everyone back, they're happy to just run it down your throat. It seems like that's the only kind of team that has any chance.
I think the only, and this is, Cody and Juwan Williams both mentioned this after the game tonight, is what they're worried about with Westfield is the time-consuming drives that they can put together on offense.
That might be the best defense for Central is keeping them off the field.
Right. So if you can just churn out first downs, especially in the playoffs.
We were thinking that last week, by the way.
Right, yeah, it didn't pan out. But don't forget, it's 11-minute quarters in the playoffs in Western Mass as opposed to the regular 12-minute quarter game. So it doesn't seem like much, but the game flies a little faster, and if you have 1 or 2 long drives, it could be halftime and you're up 14-7, and it's only been 2 or 3 drives for each team.
It can move quickly, and Westfield's a team that if they get some of those long drives going, they can really drain some clock. And that Westfield game, it could have been a completely different game if they had punched it in on the goal line.
Yeah, we talked about that last week.
We talked about it last week. So this is a Westfield team that, despite the score of the regular season finale, I think they can compete with Central if some breaks go their way.
And they did look better. They didn't take a comeback or anything this week. They beat East Longmeadow. It was 49-26. It didn't kick a comeback. They bounced back the way I'm sure they were hoping to see themselves do. Played well, and as we've mentioned, they'll be at Central either Friday or Saturday. Sunday will be when the seedings are released, and of course on MassLive.com where we all work, you'll be able to find those live and updated throughout. So. As you guys are saying, though, you wonder, it's kind of like, the Giants beating the Patriots in the undefeated season, where they got to take a look at them when it didn't totally matter, and then that familiarity seemed to maybe help. Does Westfield, having seen the speed, having seen how, because not like anybody pulled their punches last week in that game. It was clear that everybody was going all out, I think. So you wonder,
Absolutely.
Having that extra, does that give them any sort of extra insight, any sort of extra kind of feel for just how fast these guys are, just kind of how good they are, and how to at least better prepare mentally for it?
I think it certainly always helps to see a team another time.
Especially when it's like an elite team like
right,
that.
Right, and such a close window, second time in 3 weeks. So I think it's definitely going to help Westfield more than it's going to help Central.
I don't know, though. Central gets a look at that triple option attack.
That's true.
And, that's an offense where seeing it the first time, you can get caught up with those fakes and
the gimmicks.
The gimmick, right? It's not a gimmick offense, but the play fakes and the quarterback keeper and if you see it a second time around, you might be more disciplined, more prepared for it.
Tom is touchy on the gimmick idea. I like it. We're hitting a new nerve. We haven't found this one yet in the office. There are a few. That's one. We'll get back to some other ones later, baby. So let's move on to Division 4, because this is where the absolute craziness happened on Friday night. And hopefully you've been on Mass Live. You'll be able to see the photo gallery from the Agawam Northampton game. Agawam won 29-23. You've been able to watch the video that Sam put together that I didn't put any pressure on you there, Sam, did I? I was tweeting out all throughout the night. You got to see Sam's video. This is amazing. I think it came out pretty good, so good, nice work.
Thank you. Yeah, it did come out. And the funny thing is, we were talking about it while we were putting together the video, and you were writing your article after the game last night. That game was so crazy. We couldn't even put everything in the video and the article that happened in that game. As we were going through the game afterwards, there were plays that we forgot about.
It was like, oh yeah, there was a safety.
It's far at any level of sports. It's going to be you're going to be hard pressed to find a more exciting and more wild finish to a football game. It was a lot of fun to watch. And
I always joke with our younger writers about don't ever use the lead. It was a tale of two halves. I'm going to say it now. It was a tale of two halves. We were saying at halftime there were no highlights. It was 3-0. I was joking with a couple of the other reporters that our lead was going to be about the field goal that was kicked, and then the second half, that third quarter, A, it took forever, but B, it was probably the craziest quarter of football I think any of us could possibly have seen that had ever been in that stadium. There was a safety. There was
fumbles.
There were fumbles, back-to-back fumbles. There was a one sequence where it was touchdown, fumble, touchdown, or something like that. It was total insanity. Agawam's first score is a safety. They were down. Was it 17-2 at one point?
They were down 17-2, and that safety comes, believe it or not, after a fumble on a QB keeper at the 1 yard line after they had recovered a fumble.
Right. Because Northampton fumbled it on the 8. Agawam got it down to the 1. Mike Vecchiarelli, the quarterback, fumbles on the sneak. Then Northampton on the second play gets a safety. It actually looked like it might have been a touchdown. I couldn't even tell on the replay or anything, but there was some dispute whether it was a safety or a recovered fumble in the end zone.
They disputed it for a long time.
That was a long discussion. Turns out to be a safety. The weirdest play of the day was one that didn't even get into my story, or I think the video, was the onside kick that Northampton had. Sean Wackerbarth kicks the ball directly at one of the players. It bounces off the kid, flies back over the heads of the Northampton player. I've never seen that, right?
I think it went forward 10 yards and went back 20.
It really did. And Northampton turns around and falls on the ball. Like, have you ever seen that before?
And then didn't score.
Didn't score.
In a game, in a half where the offenses were clicking.
We mentioned Mike Vecchiarelli having the fumble on the goal line. To bounce back from that is big enough. He also had an interception on a screenplay that Northampton took back like 50 yards. Deep in territory. It was a couple of scoring chances that they weren't able to capitalize on. And he bounces back. He throws for 2 touchdowns. He had a fantastic final 12 minutes or so. They scored 4 touchdowns in the last 12 minutes. He had 2 throws and a run. The running play was fantastic also. He got pushed all the way out to the sideline on a scramble and made a diving play right to the pylon. It was just an absolutely incredible kind of switch to see. You really saw like the two Agawam teams, the team that you see and you go, that team went undefeated this season. Okay, I guess I can kind of see it. To the team in the last 12 minutes, you're like, whoa, this team is really good.
Yeah, it did do that. I was thinking that same thing. I was thinking, wow, Longmeadow, they're not a bad team this year, and they lost to this Agawam team pretty bad. And then you saw why they did. And it was unbelievable to see how they flipped the script, especially because this was their first playoff game in school history.
Right. We haven't even mentioned that either.
So you think maybe they were just so thrilled just to get there that they might have run out of steam a little bit. Then doesn't it just seem to have to go that way when you finally get there? Although Northampton, they hadn't been in the playoffs since 2004, just the way the script was flipped in the last, I guess, 12 minutes of that football game was unbelievable to watch. And that Agawam crowd, a pretty good-sized Agawam crowd, on a cold night, they were sitting on their hands for much of that night. But, boy, let me tell you, we were talking about it last night, Jim. It got loud there, especially when they came back and finally took the lead 21-17.
I think everyone was so shocked that they suddenly had the lead because we were all starting to kind of figure that this might be about over. And then all of a sudden, turnover, touchdown. Steve Comey goes in on a brilliant run, and the place, which had been, just totally quiet the whole game, just exploded. And then from that point on, it was a really great crowd. It was actually a really cool community event too, because like after the game, everybody from the stands was on the field, kind of just like celebrating with the kids and just really enjoying themselves and things. It was really cool.
And something we do have to give credit to Northampton though, because after Agawam came back and initially took the lead at 21-17, Malik Renner, who had a fantastic game on the next possession for the Blue Devils, 45 yards to the house. Northampton actually went back up on top and led 23-21 with under 8 minutes to go. But again, it was Agawam who answered. And just to say Renner's night, he had 235 yards and 3 touchdowns, so he more than carried his weight for the Blue Devils. But so you do have to give credit to Northampton for sticking in there, even when the momentum had completely swung to the side of the Brownies.
And it was strange because the fumbles hadn't really been an issue, and then there was 3 within the just a few possessions, and it really just completely turned the game around. The other game, the Wauconda South Hadley game, the other game in Division 4, which was in Dalton. That was a back and forth game. It felt for a while, following it in our live chat that we have every week on MassLive.com, that Wauconda was in pretty decent shape. Wauconda was in control, and all of a sudden we get an update that South Hadley's in the lead with 8 minutes left, or whatever it was, and then Wauconda comes back and scores.
I could barely keep up with everything going on. I'm in the live chat. I'm trying to watch the Central game last night. I'm keeping up on your guys' game every minute. There was something wild that was happening.
When I was tweeting in all caps, it was just total anarchy. So those 2 matchups are set for next weekend. We don't know the times and dates yet. They'll either be Friday night or Saturday at some point. But we do know the matchups themselves, and they're both pretty interesting. We got into the Central Westfield one a little. The Agawam-Wauconda one, these are 2 teams that are undefeated. It's so rare to see that at this point in the season. It feels like it's going to be worth a trip to Dalton to see that game for some people, right? You make the drive.
Oh, absolutely. And it's 2 teams, they don't know too much about each other because they don't play the same opponents really. I mean, Wacona played a few.
They both played Northampton and Agawam now twice, and all 3 of those games were tough games.
Very close.
So it doesn't feel like it's clearly Agawam beat up on this team and that was tough for another team. It was 3 tough games, so you figure it'll probably be a pretty competitive matchup.
Absolutely.
Wacona, two quarterbacks coming off of big games. We talked about Vecchiarelli's second half. Ethan Wells had 3 touchdown passes and a rushing touchdown in the win over South Hadley. He threw for 100 yards, ran for 122. I saw him in the opener against Northampton, and he was kind of a quote-unquote question mark coming into the season. Knew he was a good athlete, but he was taking over for a pretty seasoned veteran quarterback who had gotten them to the Super Bowl last year. And man, is he a good athlete, and based on the numbers and the limited exposure we've had, a good two-way quarterback. It's going to be an interesting kind of matchup for Agawam because he's not Cody Williams, but he's one of those guys that, like we said, if you're back off too much, they're happy to take the yardage. If you come up too much, they can throw it downfield. So
especially after playing a team like Northampton tonight, they only threw the ball 3 times, so it's going to be
totally different.
A completely different mindset defensively going into the game, because not only are they going to have to worry about the run, but they're going to have to worry about that pass. So it'll be interesting to see how Agawam, if they make any adjustments defensively or what they do to slow down that Wacona offensive attack and Ethan Wells at the quarterback position.
Well, and of course, there's almost no better place to see a game than a big game at Wacona. Like, I know not necessarily a ton of people from the Pioneer Valley has necessarily seen a game up there. But we're talking about like signs in front of store. We're talking about like the old school like kind of stuff. I can't even imagine what playoff games in football don't happen at home. This isn't like these teams. Even the teams that have made deep runs have played at Westfield State or at at some neutral field. This is a game at a community that rallies around teams, and this is a tournament game for basically a Western Mass championship. I can't even imagine what that place is going to be like.
I'm really excited about. That's the one. I'm not sure how I feel about in a Western Mass championship game.
It's weird
getting a home game, but it will have probably a better atmosphere than you'll see at these neutral, college sites where they typically play them.
I figured Dalton will close if the game's on Friday, they'll close the town down on Wednesday. And then if they win, they'll reopen it again on Wednesday. It'll just be vacation week.
What'll be interesting, though? I'm interested to see how many Agawam fans make that trip up there, because there's a good crowd there tonight, and a win like that is really something that can make a community even more so rally around the team. And you got to imagine the school will be sending buses up there.
Well, it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity maybe for an Agawam football fan.
Literally for
72. Haven't made a playoff appearance.
I would imagine there's going to be a pretty good Agawam following up there as well.
I kind of do want to mention, it'll be interesting to see how these 4 teams, the teams that lost this week, what they'll end up doing, because we'll also find out on Sunday the teams that are not in the tournament, both the teams that didn't make it and the teams that were eliminated, and what they do. Tom, you mentioned on Friday night, it was a good idea that the losing teams, they would cross over, and a losing team from Division II would play a losing team from Division IV that they hadn't played, and it does kind of work out that way. Those are actually, if the teams focus on those games, those are fantastic matchups if it works out that way.
Yeah, we're not the ones making decisions, but
we should be, right?
Absolutely. Let's make it happen. But just looking at the teams that were eliminated, it would make sense if Longmeadow ended up playing South Hadley, and then
which is a good rivalry actually long term. That's been a good rivalry over the years.
Yep.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
And then Northampton, East Longmeadow, because those 2 teams haven't played yet this season, and 2 games that would probably be pretty competitive.
And East Longmeadow and Northampton. How much fun would it be to go and check out Mike Badger-Pinto against Malik Renner?
I think there'd be 500 rushing yards in that game at least.
Seriously, and we have. It did end the. It's not the end of the season, but it did end the postseason potential runs for some really good players out of those 4 programs. You think about T.J. Fitzel, Malik Renner, Badger Pinto, as you mentioned. These are all guys that are either on the Dagenet watch or were honorable mentions.
They're all 1,000-yard rushers.
They're all 1,000-yard rushers. That's actually pretty incredible. We've had an incredible year for 1,000-yard rushers too. Let's hit on D5 and D6 quickly, because those are a little more up in the air. One game out of those 4 has already happened as of now, and that was another amazing game. Apparently, was Mohawk beating Franklin Tech in overtime, 20-14. That's the game that we know about. They'll play the winner of Turner's and McCann play today at 1:00, and then in D5, both those games are on Saturday. Greylock at Hoosick, a nice Northern Berkshire rivalry matchup at 1:00, and then Cathedral against East Hampton. That game is at Williston Academy. That's at 2:30 on Saturday. Out of all those matchups, out of the games that haven't happened yet, is there anything that jumps out at you, Tom, that you're most interested in kind of seeing how it plays out? You're going up to Hoosick.
I'm going up later today to the Hoosick Valley game. Obviously that's the one I'm most interested in. I think
because you get to decide where you go.
Exactly. Yep. We got a rematch from a good game earlier this season, which Hoosick Valley pulled out 20-12 over Greylock. Greylock had a couple turnovers. It was kind of a sloppy game for them. So, another home game for Hoosick. It should be a great atmosphere up there.
Speaking of places that take their high school stuff pretty seriously and rally around it, and that's an area, there's 4 schools up in northern Berkshire County that are a little set off from the rest, and it's McCann, these 2 schools, and Drury, and those are rivalries. McCann's a little different because it's a different kind of school, and they draw kids from different towns and things, but when you get a Drury-Hoosick match, a Hoosick-Greylock match, a Drury-Greylock match, especially when there's something real on the line, it is, and I'll be interested to read Tom's story, and everyone else should on MassLive.com. We need like a bell every time I say MassLive.com. It's an atmosphere, it's an intensity, and it's a really exciting kind of game.
Smash mouth football. That's what I'm excited to see. The 2 great
Enough
defenses.
of this Cody Williams stuff.
None of this throwing the ball around the field. I just want to see some smash mouth football. Some 2 great defenses going at it. Hoosick Valley's given up something like 45 points all season. So I mean, their defense is extremely strong. Mount Greylock has a great defense. And two powerful rushing attacks, so it should be just a great game. I'm
really interested actually in the Division 6 game as well because it's a Turner's Falls team that has played a bit of a more, I guess you would say, difficult schedule than McCann. They're considered to be in a higher league. McCann has been pretty dominant though, and you kind of wonder, the seedings always are interesting for that, right? Because you say, well, is it this team that's played a little harder but has a better but didn't have as good a record, but Turner's has some good athletes and they've played some good teams.
Right. I mean, they've lost. Their only 2 losses are to 2 Division 5 playoff teams. They lost to East Hampton and Cathedral.
Right.
I mean, two big losses, but like you said, they have a powerful, high-powered offense. They've got a lot of playmakers that hit the home run. Yeah, but McCann has a defense. They got a very strong defense, so it should be a good that should be a good matchup there.
So some big games. I mean, those games are going on. They're not actually, the campuses aren't that far from each other. You got a 1:00 game at Hoosick and at the same time a 1:00 game at McCann. So of course, be sure to check out the website. I said it before. I'll say it again. MassLive.com to get the updates on Saturday. We will also have what we'll be talking about in just a moment. A lot more on the website for Championship Saturday, and we'll talk a little more football in our final segment as we take another look at the Dagenais Watch with Tom and Sam. It's time to take a break, though. We're going to pay some bills, and when we come back, we will have our interview with WEEI Springfield Athlete of the Week, Alex DeSantis. As I said earlier, he is a star player for Belchertown boys soccer, and the Orioles are playing in their 5th straight Western Mass title game today. They will be playing his fourth, right? And they will take on Mount Greylock at Westfield State at 1:15. So we're giving you plenty of options to go see really good games if you want to.
Pick one out of the hat.
We'll be right back. Welcome back to High School Sports Saturday here on 105.5 WEEI. It is now time to check in with this week's WEEI Springfield Athlete of the Week, Alex DeSantis of the Belchertown boys soccer team. Alex is a senior midfielder for the Orioles, who are playing in their 5th straight Western Mass Championship game this weekend. The Orioles will play Mount Greylock of Williamstown, looking for their 3rd straight title. Alex, thank you so much for joining us this week.
Thank you for having me.
Alex has had quite a week. On Monday in the quarterfinals, he scored twice in a 6-0 win over Hoosick, and then he scored both goals for the Belchertown in a 2-1 semifinal win on Wednesday against Hampshire Regional. How is the offense clicking? Has it been an all-season thing? Are you feeling like things are really kind of clicking even better now? You got 4 goals in 2 games. It's got to be a pretty good start to the playoffs anyway.
Yeah, I think we've had great offense all season, and it's just continued into the postseason. And we have so many dangerous players that it's really just hard to pick up on one particular person. So it's left me open for a lot of opportunities.
That had to be a little bit of a strange game to prepare for, right? You go to bed on Monday assuming you're going to play Palmer, wake up and hear that there might have been a forfeit and it might be Hampshire. Then there's an appeal on Wednesday morning, and that's the day of the game. Did you guys get caught up in that? Did you try to not worry about it and just worry about your game? How did you prepare for that with all the weirdness going on?
Yeah, that was bizarre, just a bizarre moment all around. But I mean, really, whoever we played, the game plan was the same. If we knew if we played our best game, we'd be able to beat either team. So we just tried not to let that get to our head and just be ready for whoever came to play.
Do you guys talk about, a couple of yellow cards might be an issue? Or, I mean, is this something that's kind of opened your eyes about, that sort of thing can happen?
Yeah, after hearing about that game, we definitely talked about we just don't want to get into whoever we play regardless. Don't want to get into any chippy stuff because that's really not who we are. And, we like to pass around and keep possession. So if we get into that, that'll just disrupt our play and we'll be worse.
Now you're a Division III team, and you get moved up in realignment this year, moved up to the Churchill League, and you played a ton of Division I teams. What was that like based on the strength of schedule and maybe compared to the last few years for you guys?
I think the last couple of years we were a great team, but we really weren't challenged that much throughout the regular season. And I'm thinking hopefully that from facing all Division I teams this year, primarily Division I teams, that it really prepared us for postseason. So I'd like to see how far we go.
As I said, Belchertown is now a Division III team. The realignment also affected some of the divisions. There's Division I, Division III, and Division IV. They were the Division II champions these last couple of years. And Belchertown went 18-2 despite playing, as again, a Division III team against virtually all Division I. You guys played Ludlow once. You split with Westside. Those are the two teams, of course, playing for the Division I title. You guys also beat Amherst, which was the team that had made the state finals last year. What do you get out of, especially games like against those three teams where they're the elite of the elite at Division I?
Those are great games to play. That's just really a test of our team in general, and seeing. I think it just makes us closer as a team. Those kind of games just really bring us together and make us realize how well we can play. So I think that definitely helped us in the long run.
And you guys, you talked about kind of the chemistry of the team and how well things have been even from the start, but that was a pretty fantastic senior class that you graduated from last year's team. Did it take a little bit of time to kind of gel, or did you guys come out pretty early in the preseason feeling like you were going to be a pretty special team again?
I mean, we did drop some really good starting seniors, but we came back with, I think we have now 10 seniors. We still have our whole starting back line, so there really wasn't that much of a change. But, yeah.
And, I feel like I have to note as we're going into a Western Mass final here that it was, of course, you who scored the only goal last year, right, in the championship game. What was that like? What is it like to score the game winner, basically for the title?
Honestly, it seems when you say it like that, like it would be insane. It would be different from anything else, but it didn't feel that strange. It was just another goal, and I was just relieved that we had won the game.
Well, and hopefully you'll have an encore performance here as a senior this weekend. Alex, thank you so much for joining us, and congratulations on being the WEEI Springfield Athlete of the Week.
Thank you.
All right, it is time for another break. When we return, we will break down the Dagenais Watch. We're going to update the top football players in Western Massachusetts, what they did this week, and whether that is likely to change their rankings for the coming week. When we come back on Sports Radio WEEI. Welcome back to High School Sports Saturday here on 105.5 FM WEEI. Jim Pignatiello, Sam Dostaler, and Tom King, all from MassLive.com, are here. And we're now going to talk about what has been an absolutely wild week in the Western Mass tournament. From shocking upsets, there was controversy, there were some just absolute classic games.
A little bit of everything.
We really had a little bit of everything in all these sports. I think the first thing we have to talk about is the controversial part, because I think it's the thing that people have been talking about a lot. And
there was a controversy this week?
There was a minor one. Boys Division III quarterfinal earlier this week. Palmer beats Hampshire, walks off the field having won 2-0. Finds out the next morning that a fifth yellow card that was drawn at the conclusion of the game, or even after the conclusion of the game, means an automatic disqualification. 5 cards and you're out is kind of the rule. Turns into an issue of, well, the game was over. Does that count? Or why is it 5 yellow cards for one team and 0 for another team? And there were some interesting debates about this. I know you guys we've all talked about it, so I'm very interested to hear both of your both of your opinions on it.
It's a difficult situation, I think, for everybody involved, for the officials, for the players. Such a tough way to go for the Palmer seniors to win the game, but then to not win. And I feel like the whole situation, the players, I think everybody, it seemed like they handled the situation as well as they could.
Our colleague Mark Volane talked to a couple of the Palmer players. They were actually at the Hampshire-Belchertown game in the Belchertown cheering section.
Which is funny if you know how much of a rivalry Palmer and Belchertown actually is.
But at least 1 or 2 of the players said they found out that their careers were over on MassLive. They didn't get a coach call. They didn't get a coach call, That's the way they found out. They think they're headed to the semifinals, and it's just a tough way to go. I think that rule needs to be changed.
It's one of those things where I think what has happened, and it's a long-term kind of issue. The MIA wants to kind of make sure that they foster good sportsmanship and the right style of play. And what usually happens, and what I've run into, and I've had this issue a few times, is a lot of referees are kind of hesitant to give yellow cards in soccer games because they don't want it to be a massive penalty to this team, because it is such a massive penalty compared to like if you were to actually watch a international game or whatever. But in this case, it was like the opposite, where it was just kind of one of those games. And I mean, who knows what happened? We unfortunately haven't been able to find the entire story. But it gets to the point where there was a fifth card, and that's it. You literally wake up, go to bed thinking, get ready for a tough game against a really good Belchertown team, and Alex DeSantis, who we all know about now. And you wake up, you click on MassLive and find out season's over. Sorry.
And the tough thing about it is, as you kind of alluded to, is just the carding is so subjective, and it makes it not only difficult for the players, but difficult for the refs too, because it's different from game to game. You don't know how much contact is worthy of a yellow card. If you let too much go, it could get chippy. If you call too much, something like this could happen.
It is difficult because it's a very opinionated call on the referee's part. You gotta decide: are they playing the ball? Did they make a play at the ball? Did they not make a play at the ball?
Soccer ref, man, that is tough.
It's.
And you got those soccer floppers in there too, and
you throw that in there.
They take a dive every once in a while. I'm not gonna lie.
It's a basic game fundamentally, but it's such a tough game to not only play but also to officiate. Like any sport, and
it's a big field, and there's only 3 officials, so they're covering a large portion of the field. Sometimes they're 20 yards, 25 yards away, and
it's different from football, where football, the play starts in one central area, and the way you're spread out, you're able to almost all the time cover everything that happens. Soccer,
each referee has like a place where they're looking before the snap and all that.
With just the 3 officials, if a ball is crossed up the field, all of a sudden you're behind the play, and you don't necessarily get a great look at what happens. So it is a tough sport to officiate for sure.
And the interesting thing to me was, there's been a couple of instances where like a rule change or a rule or something was kind of mistaken, and after the fact, the decision by the MIAA was, well, the ruling by the umpires, at the end of the game you can appeal, but once the game is over, the game is over. Okay. I've run into that a few times with some relatively controversial stories in my long, long career now. I feel long next to you guys. This is an instance where the game was over. They gave the 5th card at the end of the game, after the game was over even. But, they signed the book, presumably. Everybody went home. The next morning, the tournament brackets were updated. Everything was hunky-dory. And then it kind of comes up to someone that, oh, hey, did you not know that 5 cards equals this? And then, oh, okay, well, let me call this person. And, oh, well, hold on a second. Oh, they forfeit. And I was like, okay, well, what if we found out the next day? Would they still have had to forfeit? What if you found out Friday night? What would have happened when they already played? It is a little bit of a slippery slope there has to be some sort of decision made, or, specific to when does it become too late if no one at the time, realized. It was surprising to me that no one did. But from all accounts that we've had, it was a phone call the next morning to, the people running the tournament that, oh, hey, it was 5 yellows and that's a disqualification.
And you have to wonder, because of the way it seems to have went down with everything happening the morning after, that the officials didn't know the rule either. And you have to wonder, if they did know the rule, would they have given that 5th yellow card and disqualified Palmer? It's certainly something that's interesting to think about, and certainly Western Mass refs aren't going to forget that rule anytime soon.
Well, no, and I did ask, as you heard, I did ask Alex DeSantis about it, because he kind of said that they didn't really know that, that wasn't something they really talked about. But after this, I think all soccer players now are discussing it. And in the Ludlow Pittsfield boys semifinal game, Ludlow had 4 cards going into the handshake line and going into like the post game celebration, and they're actually, we had reporters there, and there was some discussion. Are we going to do the handshake line? And I'm one of Ludlow's coaches. Guys, if this happens, you cannot do this. We cannot, and it becomes a thing, and yes, everybody knows about it, but at the same time, everybody knows about it.
And if now we're in a situation where you have 4 in the game, is the other team flopping around looking for that fifth card if they're down 3 or 4 goals? Are they instigating to try to get a fifth card? There's a lot of situations
it's a
where
dangerous situation.
It is. All right, let's move on to some upsets because there were at least two pretty big ones. I thought. Thursday. It was like Thursday night shockers, I think, or something. We had
this playoffs as a whole has just been.
It's true. Like
fantastic.
all I would have capped it is if like Central
days.
Football had lost on Friday night, right? But yeah, in girls soccer, I think a lot of people spent a lot of the year expecting a Belchertown Minichog girls Division I final. 2 defending champs in different divisions. They played to a tie. It was the only non-win that Belchertown had all year. Didn't happen.
we got a rematch instead.
Just as good.
Just as good. We got a rematch of the Division I championship last year, which ended in penalty kicks. So that should be a fun one.
Pittsfield beats Belchertown 1-0.
They did a fantastic job. Pittsfield Belchertown controlled time of possession, but with that said, Belchertown never really had any clean looks at the net. They got 10 shots on goal, but none of them were good, clean strikes. Pittsfield, they didn't get many offensive chances, but when they had them, they had the better looks at net, and they were the team that was finally able to break through with under 3 minutes left.
And you really kind of wondered what kind of performance it would take, and you have to be willing to kind of game plan to say we're only going to have 30% of the possession or whatever. We're just going to kind of take the licks and hope that nobody breaks free, hope that nobody can really crush one. That takes some. You have to be a little brave to do that, right? You have to be willing to kind of put that out there and say, we might have a couple of scares here, but this is our best chance.
And you know what, Pittsfield, they brought some extra defenders back to hold off the Belchertown high-powered offense. Of course, the Moreau sisters for Belchertown both going to UConn next year to continue their soccer careers. Pittsfield brought some extra defenders back, and although it was rare that they got an offensive possession, when they did, they were able to get out in numbers because not only did Pittsfield have players back, Belchertown sent a lot of their players up on the offensive end. So if that ball was if they were able to get by, they had numbers on a couple of occasions, and finally, on one of those few occasions they did have numbers, they did capitalize.
I think a lot of reporters, will have a story that they wish they had written in hindsight. And one of the things that always bothered me coming into the season was that no one really knew why Belchertown got moved up to Division I in this realignment. The Belchertown boys are in Division III. They eliminated Division II. There's Division I, 3, and 4 starting this year. Belchertown boys are Division III. They are the multiple-time champion. We just talked about how great they've been. There was no great reason for them to move up. They're still D3. They play a D1 regular season schedule, but they're still D3. The girls, who have had, I guess you would say, a little bit more success than the boys, but not to the point where they're like the 5-time defending state champions. The Moreaus never won a state championship. They got to the finals last year. That was kind of getting over the hump. Their enrollment didn't explode or anything. They were kind of a borderline team. And you just kind of feel like, well, we moved them up because they were dominating in this division, but it was okay, but
they were pretty dominant all season this year too, though.
It's true, and I'm not saying that they couldn't compete at that level, but I guess my point is, why didn't the league girls basketball team ever get moved up? Why didn't there are teams like this consistently throughout. Turner's Falls softball has won X number of Division III softball titles, and so it's just kind of strange. And I'm not making excuses; it doesn't matter. To me, it was a great game and a great season, and they went undefeated in the toughest division in Western Mass. They clearly could cut it, but just so strange how some of these decisions seem so arbitrary. And then I honestly assumed going into the season that it was like the program's decision. We're going to move up. We want to be no. And they didn't know who made the decision either. Strange decision.
Because you think if one moved up, you would have thought the other would, just because they've both been successful programs over at Belchertown.
And there isn't like a massive disparity between, like, sometimes you do see that where there's way more girls or boys in a school, and that happens. But so something that I've been thinking about all season, and of course I'm like, it would have been an interesting thing to have written. Another part of the Thursday night shockers was Minichog girls volleyball has really looked like an unstoppable force down the stretch to beat Frontier twice,
Nice.
to beat Longmeadow down the stretch, to win that Eastern League title. And then they go into the semifinals. They're hosting Longmeadow. Longmeadow's a 6-time champion, probably a team that was facing the toughest challenge over that course of that time. And an unbelievable 5-set match that went right down to the wire. They had to go beyond 25 a couple times. The last game was 15-13. Another upset of a team that we really, I think, penciled in for at least a trip to the finals.
Those two, were just both equally as shocking to me. I think we all assumed Minnetonka. Longmeadow seemed. I mean, they were still good this year, but they didn't seem.
They were 4 seed.
Right, they were 4 seed. You know, they didn't seem to have that edge that they've had over these past. You know, this dominant run.
It falls under what I said to Jack Flagler, another MassLive guy who was on with us last week. After we were both at the Pittsfield Belchertown game, and I said to him, "This is why you play the games," and that's exactly it. You play the games because you never know what's going to happen.
So I want to spend a couple more minutes on this segment talking about some of the things that are going on this weekend, because it is kind of Super Saturday for the fall, and there are a couple of things on Sunday. Cross country championships, which of course the Western Mass Championships in Northfield. There's 4 races, and we'll be crowning individual titles and division titles for teams and things. Boys soccer, there's 2 games on Saturday, the Ludlow West Springfield, which should be a fantastic game on Saturday at 3:30 at Westfield State. West Side goes to PKs and beats Amherst a 3rd time, which, I mean, I can't think of the last time anybody beat Amherst 3 times this
Alex
season.
Graver, he has been fantastic in that for that West Side team.
We had some great video from that matchup, too, on the site, and, I mean, you really saw just how good and dominant he was. I mean, really, sometimes you hear a lot about how goalies have to, like, kind of guess and pick. It didn't feel like it when you were watching that. It felt like he knew exactly what was going to happen. And then they come out with that kind of win, and having played really well, they have to face a Ludlow team that
doesn't get any easier.
I think we had it somewhere how many years in a row they've been in the finals, but it's an absolutely ridiculous number. The Belchertown Greylock match, which we talked about. This is a weird rivalry because Belchertown's knocked off Greylock like a bunch of times over this recent run in the semifinals or finals. So that'll be an interesting matchup. That's at 1:15 on Saturday. The Division 4 game for boys is another good matchup. Hopkins, the defending champion, against Munson. That's on Sunday at 3. Girls soccer, the Pittsfield Minnetonka game that we just were talking about. That's the nightcap. That's the capper on Saturday at 5:45. The first game on Saturday is a Granby Athol Division 3 final that I think everyone had in their brackets. Right, was Granby Athol, the number 10 Athol team.
Bracket busters.
And then Division 4 was Munson again, and then a Gateway team that had another. It was another great game. There's so many good games this week. That game is this Sunday at 5:15. And then we also have field hockey finals. We have volleyball finals.
I'm really looking forward to that Belchertown Greylock game. I was there for both semifinal matchups, and it was two great games. I mean, the Greylock game was an epic showdown against Monument Mountain. They really, to be quite honest, Monument Mountain dominated that second half of play, but Cal Filson was just incredible in net. I mean, he made, I think, 9 saves in the second half, and 4 or 5 of them were just saves you don't think a sophomore is going to be able to make.
It's so much fun watching a good goalie play. There's almost nothing like it. It's really is a lot of fun.
It was great.
All right, so we are going to take another break. We will be back. We're going to wrap things up, and in doing so, we're going to talk about the top players in Western Madison football. We kind of wrap things up every week, taking a look at the few top guys and if there's any movement in what they've done. But for now, we got to pay some bills, so we'll be right back. All right, welcome back to our 4th and final segment here on High School Sports Saturday. Time to take a look at the Dagenet Watch, as we do every week. The Dagenet Award is given each year to the top football player in Western Massachusetts, and each week until this week, MassLive is taking a look at the award, at the top 10 candidates and some honorable mentions for the awards. It's kind of, as we said before, Tom King and Sam Dostaler joining me, Jim Pignatiello. Tom, it's kind of solidified itself, right? I mean, it would take a lot at this point for Cody Williams not to be the winner, I would think. It's not our watch is not the award, but it would be surprising, I would think, at this point if he's not the winner.
Yeah, he's gonna be the winner.
But incredible though, because we were talking earlier about how many 1,000-yard rushers there were this year. Guys with just a ton of touchdowns with great seasons. Guys that we mentioned like Mike Magipinto. The fact that Malik Renner didn't even make like your top 10 for most of the year with the season he's had. It's a really deep year.
We had a lot of running backs who came on strong in the second half of the season. Long Meadows, Max Chapuris, Malik Renner, those double wing tee offenses. Seems like they found their stride in the second half of the season. Malik Renner has been fantastic the past 5 or 6 weeks. Max Chapuris in their last 3 games before the playoff game, he ran for 700 combined yards. Right. And, I mean, Mike Magipinto, he's had a season in the last 4 weeks by himself, run for 1,100 yards, 20 touchdowns the last 5 games. So, I mean, just some great running backs out there, but it's Cody Williams at top.
And the guys who kind of were solidified as the top 3 have been Cody Williams, of course, as we mentioned, Magipinto, and then Steve Comey, who has been kind of the MVP for an undefeated Agawam team that we talked about. Interesting that this week, I would say all 3 of them probably didn't have their best weeks. I mean, Cody ran for 2 touchdowns, but they only threw the ball a few times, and he had that horrible interception that just was the destruction of his entire season. Sarcasm, that's obvious,
yes,
right?
Yes.
Imagine Pinto. I jokingly say that he didn't have a very good game. 163 ran a touchdown is a great game, but for him, it's
not
just,
for him
it's
anymore.
all right.
Yeah.
And then Comey had 79 rushing yards and a touchdown, but it was a huge win.
And that touchdown for Comey was a huge touchdown. It put Agawam on top for the first time from 31 yards out.
And it was the moment we talked about where the place exploded.
It was a huge run, made a nice cut back in the middle of the field.
And amazingly, that is pretty much going to wrap things up for us this week on High School Sports Saturday. We really appreciate you guys opening your Saturday and your weekend with us here on 105.5 WEEI. We'll be back next week. We're going to be previewing state championship weekend. We're going to talk more about week 2 of the high school football tournament. We really need to decide exactly what we're going to call that, whether it's the Western Mass Championship or not.
You can't have 2 Super Bowls, though.
I agree. But first, we're going to make a couple of plugs before we go. Sam Dostaler is at @SamDosty_5 on Twitter. Tom is very formal on Twitter. He is at @ByThomasKing. And I'm you can follow me at Pignatiello. I would spell it for you, but again, I don't have time. I'm sorry. Follow MassLive High School sports coverage at MassLive HS. And as I said last week, we have to give a big thanks to all the folks here at WEEI Springfield, especially our producer Mark Leake, who is yet again burning the candle on both ends to make this show happen. Thank you very much, and please have a great weekend.